It seems like with each new Pokemon game release, less and less old Pokemon are viable, as new Pokemon take their place and power creep inevitably leaves the old Pokemon just trying to find some niche to fit in. But Pokemon Champions has sort of done the opposite of that. The limited dex and item pool has caused many Pokemon who have previously not been considered top tiers to find themselves being somewhat competitively viable. Today, I just want to talk about the 5 biggest winners from Pokemon Champions. These are going to be Pokemon that were kind of like mid-tier, if not low-tier in previous games, that ended up being a lot more viable now that Pokemon Champions has released, and they managed to find a niche. Also, I know I'm not wearing like a shirt today. I don't want it. It's Friday. My girlfriend's out of town. There are no rules. I can wear my Snoopy hat and talk about Pokemon in a tank top. Let's just get right into it. If you guys enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, become a YouTube channel member, hype the video, all of that. And hey, you definitely want to subscribe because at 300,000 subscribers, I'll be ranking every bench in Lumio City. Let's just begin. At number 5, I have Komo-o. Now, Komo-o is actually a really fun one because Komo-o has always suffered from I drop to every fairy type in the game syndrome. As a fighting dragon type, Komo-o is able to hit many Pokemon for neutral, if not super effective damage, as the only Pokemon that resist dragon type moves are steel and fairy types, so being able to hit the steel types with fighting type moves is great. But being a dragon fighting type means that not only is it walled by fairy types, but also it's super weak to fairy types. It has a 4 times weakness to them. In previous generations, Komo-o has struggled because it either is in a fairy infested meta, such as VGC 2017 and 2018, or it's had to play extremely carefully with some kind of bodyguard to remove the fairy type from the field and allow it to actually play the game. In Pokemon Champions though, we don't have a lot of fairy types. A lot of the fairy types from previous games have just been not introduced yet. The 3 fairy types that are actually competitively relevant are Mega Gardevoir, Mega Floette Eternal, and Sylveon. And you can play on ladder for hours and not run into any one of those Pokemon if you just manage to get the right matchups. On top of that, with Sinistcha being such a phenomenal Pokemon, it's actually a pretty decent pair with Komo-o to allow you to deal with the fairy types before Komo-o hits the field. But arguably the biggest boon to Komo-o's viability is the fact that there just aren't a lot of fairy types that can switch in on its moves. Its move, Clanger's Soul, gives it an Omni boost at the expense of some of its health. Then afterwards, it's able to spam Clanging Scales for some pretty significant damage while also sponging hits and healing with partner Sinistcha. It's an incredible offensive Pokemon, but it even just fits well on other archetypes. Its ability Soundproof means that it can be immune to Perish Song. This is great into opposing Perish teams, but it's arguably even better on your own Perish team, as Komo-o doesn't have to worry about switching out if a partner Mega Gengar goes for Perish Song. Komo-o can just stay in on the field, go for its setup moves, and deal pretty significant damage. It being a fighting type with access to Body Press also means that it can deal with one of the better answers to Gengar's Perish Trap, which is Parting Shot Incineroar, as a Body Press or an Aura Sphere will be doing a lot of damage to it. Yeah, Komo-o is just in a pretty phenomenal place in the metagame right now, and I think we kind of have to acknowledge that. Even though it's not like the best Pokemon in the game, it is doing really good in tournaments at the moment. At number 4, I have Rotom-Wash, and I think that this is a pretty common sentiment among VGC players, but you can tell how healthy a metagame is based on how viable Rotom-Wash is. If Rotom-Wash is not able to do what it wants to do, you're probably dealing with a metagame that hits just a little too hard. Rotom-Wash doesn't have terrible stats. It has 50 HP, 107 defense, 105 special defense, and 107 special defense with 86 speed. This is a really good balance, but the issue is, it is not the bulkiest Pokemon in the game, but it wants to kind of LARP as a bulky Pokemon. Rotom-Wash loves to hold the Citrus Berry, and it loves to click Will-O-Wisp. But when Pokemon like Fluttermane are running around, or Pokemon like Urshifu are running around, and you can't really mitigate the damage Rotom is going to take, that 50 HP starts to really feel like the low stat that it really is. Your defenses aren't going to carry you nearly as far if your HP isn't high enough. But with the current metagame lacking a lot of the higher power Pokemon from previous games, alongside also being extremely physical, Rotom-Wash is actually in a pretty phenomenal position. Its Levitate ability means that it can switch in on Earthquake from Garchomp and Excadrill. Access to Will-O-Wisp means it can burn many of the physical attackers, including Sneasler and King Gambit, and its Water Electric typing means it does really well into some of the really threatening Pokemon like Basculegion. There's a couple of different Rotom sets going around, but the top 2 at the moment are Citrus Berry Bulky with Will-O-Wisp support, and the other one is Scarf Electroweb. Rotom-Wash is actually at just high enough of a speed tier where it's able to Electroweb and outspeed Scarf Basculegion, meaning that you can use Rotom as a speed control option to lower opposing Pokemon's speed stats and then attack with a faster partner Pokemon. It's just really well positioned in the metagame, and that's a really nice change of pace, as Rotom-Wash hasn't been considered viable since at least early Generation 8, if not way back in Generation 7. At my number 3 spot, I actually have Sinistcha. Now, I know Sinistcha and the next Pokemon I'm going to talk about in this list are Pokemon that I included in my top 10 Pokemon in the game overall video, but for this video, I want to talk about just how big of a glow up they got in Pokemon Champions, because while Sinistcha was never an outright bad Pokemon, it wasn't a meta-defining Pokemon like it is right now. Sinistcha is a grass ghost type, meaning that it can't be faked out, and it's going to be a Pokemon that can set Trick Room while also having access to Rage Powder redirection. What really makes Sinistcha do super well in this format is the fact that it is a lower power format where damage isn't as easy to crank out. With lots of Pokemon being 2 or 3 hit KO'd by even the strongest attackers in the metagame, Sinistcha's ability Hospitality means that it's going to be able to switch in and heal partner Pokemon for 25% and allow them to live an extra hit. The lack of redirection Pokemon such as Magmar, Electabuzz, Clefairy, and even Amoonguss in the game means that Sinistcha's Rage Powder is actually a very rare trait that is extremely useful for a lot of teams. Its only real competition for redirection users are Mousehold and Clefable, if we're being honest. While defensively, its type isn't phenomenal, as it's going to be weak to some of the better Pokemon in the format, like Mega Charizard Y and Kingambit. Because this game incentivizes you so much to run defensive berries, it means that Sinistcha is able to account for those weaknesses and run the proper defense berry to cut damage from Fire-type moves with the Aqua Berry or from Dark-type moves with the Cobra Berry. And once again, this format is so physically oriented that Sinistcha's signature move Matcha Gotcha is actually just incredibly strong. Matcha Gotcha will not only heal Sinistcha for 50% of the damage it deals to both opponents, but it has a 20% chance to burn any Pokemon that it hits, and with such a physically oriented metagame, this means that Sinistcha can effectively cut the damage in half from most Pokemon that are relevant for the rest of the game if they get burned. It's just positioned really well in the metagame right now, and the tools that it has are just really useful for what we're facing right now. Okay, this is another Pokemon for my top 10 Pokemon in the metagame video, but we do need to acknowledge how absurd the glow up that Aerodactyl had in Pokemon Champions is. Aerodactyl is a Pokemon with Gen 1 stats. Now, that isn't always bad. Sometimes Gen 1 stats can carry you for generations and generations. Just take a look at Arcanine or Clefable. But Aerodactyl is especially useful as the lower power of this format means that we also have lower speed tiers across the board. At 130 base speed, Aerodactyl is only going to be outsped by a few Pokemon, including Mega Delphox, Dragapult, and Mega Aerodactyl itself. Its high speed means that it is one of the best Tailwind users in the game, and because Garchomp is also just as relevant, it means that you can pair it next to Garchomp, go for Earthquakes, and then spam Rock Slide to your heart's content. What really puts Aerodactyl over the top, I would say, is its ability Unnerve. Like I said, this game has an extremely limited item pool, and most items in the game are berries. Pokemon want to run Aqua Berries to reduce damage from Charizard, Cobra Berries to reduce damage from Dark-type attackers like Tyranitar or Kingambit. They want to run Charty Berries to reduce Rock-type attacks. They want to run Chople Berry to live the close combat from opposing Sneasler. Being able to use Unnerve Aerodactyl and just turn off berries for the opponent's Pokemon means that you get to thwart a lot of their answers into Aerodactyl. There are Sinistcha that run the Cobra Berry to reduce damage from flying type attacks, but into Aerodactyl, they don't get to do that. The dual Wing Beat will be doing full damage into them. And if they want to run the Citrus Berry to try to live the hit, they don't get to eat that either. Aerodactyl is just a really frustrating Pokemon, and it is one of the reasons that Rock Slide is one of the most annoying moves in the game right now. It outspeeds most Pokemon in the game and can just Rock Slide for free. This is something that Aerodactyl hasn't been able to do consistently since at least VGC 2017, where even back then it was an extremely niche pick. And its Mega Form is even more powerful as you use the Mega Form as an option to beat opposing Aerodactyl, as not only does it have better damage output, but its higher speed means that you will always win the Tailwind war on turn 1. If there's not a speed tie, you will Tailwind, and you and your Garchomp will go before the opposing Aerodactyl and Garchomp. Yeah, Aerodactyl is just in a phenomenal place in the metagame right now, and we have to acknowledge that. Our final Pokemon on this list, our number 1 biggest glow up in Pokemon Champions. I am so happy that I was wrong about this Pokemon, but it is going to Mega Scovillain or regular Scovillain, whichever you want. We just have to acknowledge that everyone thought that Mega Scovillain was going to be awful in Pokemon Champions. We all thought that its stat spread did not justify running it whatsoever. But as it turns out, its ability is more than enough of a reason to run Mega Scovillain. Mega Scovillain has the ability Spicy Spray, meaning that any attack that hits Scovillain will cause the user of that attack to get burned. This includes non-contact moves like Rock Slide, physical contact moves like Dragon Claw, and even special attacks like Dark Pulse. Anything that touches Scovillain will get burned. And when you combo that with Mega Scovillain's access to Rage Powder, it means that it's able to redirect attacks into itself, forcing the opponent to burn themselves. And once again, I said that this is an extremely physical format. Most attackers in this game are physical attackers. And having Mega Scovillain enter the battlefield, burn something, and then let a partner Pokemon set up or swing for free means that even if your Scovillain is basically just a sacrifice to the opponent's team, that a Pokemon that they have to KO before they can do anything else, it makes it worth it to run on these setup teams next to Pokemon like Dragonite, like Kingambit, like Garchomp. It is just a powerful option, and we've seen multiple players make it into Champions tier or even first place on the ladder with Mega Scovillain. Is Mega Scovillain an S tier Mega? No, but it would happily fit on a ton of really great teams that can do incredible in tournaments, and it can even just be a secondary Mega on a team that could win a tournament. I think Mega Scovillain is a contender for a regional champion going forward, which is something that I wouldn't say had I not seen it with my very eyes that Mega Scovillain is actually an incredible Pokemon. And yeah, no one thought that that was the case. Mega Scovillain was supposed to be trash, but here we are talking about it getting #1 on the ladder. But those were just my 5 biggest winners for Pokemon Champions. Maybe I should talk about the 5 biggest losers of Pokemon Champions. Pokemon that just aren't going to fare well in this upcoming metagame. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what video I should make next. The Monday videos are super scripted. The Wednesday and Friday videos are just me giving my thoughts on current metagame stuff. So yeah, let me know what you guys want me to do for any one of those. If you guys enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications, and yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.